Hello again and welcome to Amiga Reviews. I'm the eager Amiga Eagle, but don't take my word for it. Today we are going to be jumping off cliffs with excitement as we take a look at Lemmings, one of the most iconic games created for the Amiga. Developed by Rockstar North's previous incarnation, DMA Design, and published by the omniscient Psygnosis 2 years before Sony sank its pre-PlayStation clause in. Lemmings was one of DMA Design's earlier games, and is a devilishly designed platform puzzler where the aim of the game is to save groups of the lovable little lemmings from coming to a gruesome end. In these days, where AI seems to pervade virtually every part of our lives, the titular rodents are anything but. The lemmings in this game know only one thing: keep walking forward until death or destination. They will drop into the environment via a bizarre hovering trapdoor, and it is up to the player to manage these hordes, trying to ensure that as many as possible make it to the exit. An interesting side note and disclaimer, and to stop me coming to the attention of the various animal protection organisations around the world, apparently lemmings do not intentionally throw themselves off cliffs. This was a myth perpetrated in 1958 by, of all people, the Disney Corporation. Disney made a nature documentary called White Wilderness, where they used special effects, and a little pushing the poor devils off ledges amongst other things, to make it look as if this is what they did. It is widely believed that in general, animals are not capable of intentionally ending their own lives. But Disney thought it would create dramatic footage. Strangely ironic, I'm sure you'll agree. I think it's fair to say that the lemmings in this game have about as much in common with real lemmings as chalk and genetic engineering. They are bipedal, have little pink wombly faces with huge eyes, green spiky hair, and a bizarre formless onesie. Are they born wearing these? To stop these darling little creatures from ending it all prematurely, you can assign them tasks that they will use to navigate the various levels in the game. There are 8 different activities that you can make the lemmings do. Climbing, parachuting with a cute little umbrella, blocking, bridge building with a handy helping of physics ignorance, tunnelling along, mining diagonally down, digging straight down, and exploding. Once you allocate an activity to a lemming, they will do most of them every time the opportunity arises, except for exploding, or you give them something else to do, again, except for exploding. If you happen to forget what a specific lemming is set to do, you can hover over it with the mouse and it will show you the lemming's skill above the activity buttons. It is possible to allocate more than one activity, and when you do this, the lemming in question is labelled Athlete. Nice little touch there. So, exploding. There are 2 ways of going about this: individually, or quite literally nuking every lemming on the stage. This is undoubtedly the main thing everyone who has played the game remembers. When you set a lemming to explode, a 5-second countdown timer appears over their head, and when it runs out, they stand there, punching themselves in the head until they literally explode, showering lemming chunks everywhere. Despite seeming useless and a little barbaric, there are times when exploding a lemming or 2 is the only way of progressing through the level. At least that makes me feel better, knowing that the level designers have a deeper level of psychosis than I do. There is very little to no plot to the game, just lots and lots of levels. 120 in total in the single player game. They are split evenly across 4 levels of difficulty, ranging from fun to mayhem. And trust me, those level descriptors are not inaccurate. There is a multiplayer element too, more on this later. The first few levels on fun setting serve as an introduction to the game. I refuse to use the word tutorial because it is still very possible to screw these levels up in the most embarrassing fashion. During these levels, only the required activities are available. This makes it quite obvious what needs to be done. You are also only given a few lemmings, but as the levels progress, this ramps up to the full roster with a maximum complement of 100 lemmings dropping in to join the fun. I can't help but notice that the environment through the hovering trapdoor looks considerably more inviting than a lot of the levels that these little creatures need to traverse. Some of the levels have borders, and the lemmings will continue to walk back and forth until the timer runs out. but there are also levels where they can fall into the abyss, and more often than not, there is no warning that this is going to happen. The Lemmings are not the smartest of digital gods beings, and they are not the fastest either. Quite often, after planning your strategy, you place your bridge builder or miner, and it can take in the region of 15 to 20 seconds to complete their task. And you notice that the rest of the Lemmings continue to walk past regardless, usually to an untimely demise. Therefore, you need to think a few steps in advance, placing blockers to stop the progressing hordes. But blockers do not stop the Lemmings. Oh no! They just turn around and carry on walking in the opposite direction, usually to a death at the other end of the level. Therefore, strategy is important, as is timing and lemming management. This is quite an interesting puzzle game, which can also be very frustrating when you realise that you have lost a load due to a miscalculation. Virtually all lemming deaths or level failures are attributed to you, the player, by simply not thinking ahead or by being quick enough with the mouse on the action needed. As we have already determined, the name of the game is to rescue as many lemmings as possible. In the first few levels, the perfect score is quite attainable. But when you start having to sacrifice a lemming or two, this can become rather frustrating. Blockers can only be returned to walkers by tunnelling beneath them, but this is not always possible, so the only other way is to blow them up. A perfect score obliterated by design. If you fancy a little bit of light revenge or stress relief, there is a button in the middle of the control panel that looks like a nuclear explosion. This is the one that kills all remaining lemmings on the screen. One by one, the little countdown timer will appear above the head, and after 5 seconds they will explode with a strangely satisfying pop, showering the level in lemming chow, as well as destroying a considerable amount of their immediate surroundings. You have to double click the nuke icon, which ensures that you have not clicked it by mistake. This is a nice way to put an end to proceedings if the level becomes unwinnable, a sort of serves you right for being so thick button. There are also traps in a lot of the levels, each one with its own unique lemming death animation. Quite often you will see your beloved little feckless creatures walking happily towards fire or a spinning mechanism. You work quickly out of desperation, but you still have to sit and watch while a few are discombobulated. If you've been fortunate to play a Lemmings game, I can pretty much guarantee that if someone mentions it, the first thing that will pop into your head will be one of the complete earworms that make up the soundtrack. They are simple, sampled pieces, but damn are they memorable. There are around a dozen tracks in the game, and after 30 or so minutes of gameplay, they will be locked in your memory forever. The in-game graphics are colourful and bright, with amusingly conceived levels. These are all designed in the unmistakably surreal Psygnosis fashion. A lot of the scenery is destructible, which is often a key component to completing the level. There is also a little green map interpretation of the level in the bottom right corner, and you can use this to zip back and forth quickly. All of the lemmings appear on here as a small yellow dot, and any damage or additions such as the bridges appear on there too. It's actually quite a clever concept for the time. The in-game's lemmings are really small, and there's no way of zooming in. They're comprised of around 24 pixels at most, yet they are animated with a surprisingly high level of detail. There is also a 2-player mode with its own unique levels. In order to play, you need 2 mice. This blew my mind at the time. I had never seen a computer program or game before this that could support 2 mice independently. To this day it is still not something that you see very often. Apparently this was influenced by games like Populous and Stunt Car Racer's split screen mode. This superseded the other considered option of a null modem to connect Amigas together. Each player has their own themed lemmings. Player 2's has the colours switched. The aim here is to get as many lemmings as possible through your specific exit. You cannot interact with the other players' lemmings directly, but this doesn't mean you can't block them, dig under them, or pilfer them into your own exit. This can lead to some very heated battles, as you realise that not only are your lemmings not going into your exit, but they are happily jumping into your opponents. Many an expletive and thrown mouse have resulted from two-player lemmings, but it certainly ramps up the fun. Lemmings remain the property of Psygnosis through their acquisition by Sony, but when Psygnosis went under, the IP transferred to Sony. During this time, the game was ported to many different formats, including virtually all of the game systems available at that time, and most of the following generation. Programmer David Jones was quoted saying that after porting the game to 20 systems, he stopped keeping count of additional ports. It is believed that Lemmings is one of the most ported games of all time, certainly during that era of gaming. It is considered to be the forerunner to the modern real-time strategy games. It is virtually impossible to think of the Amiga without also thinking about Lemmings. When I got my first Cartoon Classics pack Amiga 500 Plus back in 1991, Lemmings was a pack-in game along with The Simpsons, Captain Planet and Deluxe Paint. I think it's fair to say that I played Lemmings the most out of those three games. Then someone gave me X-Copy, and that was the end of that. But it is still a fun little game with plenty of replay value. There were sequels and even 3D versions, but none of them are as iconic or recognisable as the original. And don't get me started on how bad the 3D ones were. So iconic was the game that it even got its own UK Royal Mail stamp in 2020. Thanks very much for watching. I'm the Eager Amiga Eagle. If you enjoy my videos, please like and subscribe, and as always, see you next game!